So something that I noticed that was trending on Facebook just a few minutes ago, actually, was that Coleco apparently released a statement that they're preparing to release a new console. More importantly, a new cartridge-based console. And, I was looking through the comments. It was shared by a few big game journalism websites. And I was looking through the comments, and what appeared to me was that a lot of people weren't aware of where this came from and how it started. They were saying things like, "Oh, that's cool. ColecoVision is making a new system. No more load times. You don't have to worry about patches or DLC or any of that bullshit. I'm behind it." I don't think people actually realized where this project started. So I figured, allow me to enlighten the masses, or whoever happens upon this video, of where this new ColecoVision machine actually originated. So a few months ago, an indiegogo was opened for a new console that was titled the Retro VGS. You can still go to the Indiegogo page if you Google up Retro VGS. I'll put the link to the Indiegogo in my description. But the first thing you'll notice when you look at it is, holy shit, it's an Atari Jaguar. And obviously, it's not an Atari Jaguar. They are using the shell for the Atari Jaguar because apparently those things are a fucking dime a dozen nowadays. No, actually the reason was that the molds were relatively affordable, and it's a lot easier to buy a mold than to spend the money on R&D developing a new shell to fit something inside. This, rather than, you could just pick up the mold and figure out what you have to do to fit your parts in that shell. It cuts your R&D time in half, pretty much. That's half your problem solved. So the reason behind this console was not only to have games specifically developed for the system, which I believe there were 2 or 3 confirmed that were exclusive at the time, that were going to be exclusive. But not only that, but to have smaller indie games have a place where they could get a physical release. Because a lot of people, myself included, are still into the whole physical release thing. And there is a little bit of a market there, I think, for people who don't want to buy digital only and would like to buy something on a physical medium to have on their shelf. So the problems came in when you started to think about, well, what happens when a lot of these indie games wind up getting either updates, free DLC, or even paid DLC? What happens when these things come out that wind up improving your game? Because DLC can still be a good thing, and it oftentimes is. But if you have this thing that has no internet connectivity and doesn't have any kind of internal firmware that allows you to connect to a server or anything like that, you cannot receive these updates, these patches, anything. See, now that right there was probably the biggest downside for me. Because, yeah, it's cool to have something on a physical cartridge or, some kind of physical medium. But again, when the game is updated, you're fucked, bro. You don't get anything. So, on top of that, the donation perk that enabled you to pre-order the Retro VGS was $299. So, you could assume that that's what it was planned to retail at once the thing released. What was even crazier was that they were planning on releasing limited edition Retro VGS consoles for people who wanted to donate a little bit more. And they had 3 different colors. They had a bronze, a silver, and a gold. The bronze was going to run you $399 if you wanted to pre-order that one. The silver, $424, and the gold, $449. So they were asking ridiculous amounts of money from people for something that might not even make it out, because this was still in its early planning stages. And unfortunately for the Retro VGS and its team, the Indiegogo would wind up closing on November 3rd, 2015, at $81,158. What they were asking for, however, was $1.95 million to make this fucking thing. Now, I don't know how many pre-orders they had. I don't know how many they were expecting to build off the bat. But $2 million is a lot of fucking money to ask from a bunch of people who have never met you before, and a product that's brand new, a product that might not even succeed. That's a lot of fucking money. So right there, that kind of turned me off. Now, as sad as it is to see any project fall under, especially something this far under its goal, is not something to celebrate. I think it's horrible. It sucks. And the people who started it were obviously behind it and thought it was a good project. The thing I said as soon as I seen it right from the beginning was that you got to understand that you were already entering a very niche market of retro video game collectors. That was the only group of people that this was going to appeal to. Now, on top of entering a niche market of retro video game collectors, you were entering an even nicher, if that's a word, market. You were cutting that group down even further to only the people within that group that wanted something like that. So you got to understand there weren't going to be that many people to go around that were going to hop on board with you. What really may have sunk the project, though, was the fact that they wound up getting into a little bit of a fight with the person that they had developing the boards for their machine, who was a prominent member of the Atari Age forums and was basically publicizing not everything, but a lot of the stuff that was going on between them. And the fact that he was tasked with developing these things and they were all done and they were yet to be paid for. And there was all these things that were going on behind the scenes that were being made public while their Kickstarter was going on, or rather their Indiegogo was going on, which probably didn't help at all. And even before I heard that, I wasn't prepared to throw any money down for this thing. So all that happened, and the Indiegogo failed miserably, like I mentioned earlier. And, well, fast forward to today when I was scrolling down my Facebook newsfeed, and I noticed in the little trending section something that said Coleco. So, hold on. So I went back and I read it, and it said, Coleco, company developing new cartridge-based video game console. And I went, that's strange that would happen. You don't expect to hear Coleco coming back into the console market, right? So I clicked on it, and the first thing I see is a press picture of what their new console is supposed to look like. It's called the Coleco Chameleon. And wouldn't you know, it's in the same mold as the Atari Jaguar. So immediately I went, whoa. They want the Atari Jaguar mold too? I thought these other guys owned it. And then when I clicked on it, lo and behold, that picture was posted by the Retro VGS's official Facebook page. So what we have here is a rebranding of the Retro VGS in hopes of using the Coleco name in order to gain a little notoriety and hopefully get people to donate to a new Indiegogo or Kickstarter or however they intend to go about this. See, the problem here is it's still the same machine. It's just using a different name in hopes to get people to donate money. But it still suffers from all the same things I was mentioning before. When games that you do like do get updates and stuff, what's going to happen? They're going to re-release the same cartridge again, and you're going to have to pay $60, $70 for another cartridge. You know, cartridge production is expensive, so it's going to take longer to get these things out. It's not going to be a 1, 2, 3 thing like it is with bigger companies that are producing discs. Not to mention that this smaller company is not going to have the resources to start pumping these things out. You know what my favorite part about this whole thing is, though? Something I failed to mention earlier on in the video is the controller that the Retro VGS was planning on using. What they were planning on using was one of the knockoff Pro controllers you could get off Amazon for the Wii U. So not the Nintendo branded ones. There were third-party Pro controllers that you can buy. You can go on Amazon right now and buy them, and you can USB them to your computer. And with the proper drivers, you can get them set up as a PC gamepad or whatnot. So let me get this straight. You were asking us for $2 million for a console whose mold you didn't develop, you went out and bought for a fraction of the price, and you couldn't even go and develop your own controller. You had to buy a stock of knockoff Wii U controllers from somebody else. Really, bro? Really? And they're still using the same fucking controller after they went through all the trouble of rebranding the machine to have the Coleco name. They didn't bother to go, hey, you know what? Maybe we should actually make a controller as opposed to just using a Wii U controller. No. It's just the same fucking thing, except now it says Coleco Chameleon on it. When before, I don't even think they had even gotten around to applying a name to the controller. They were just showing a picture with the regular controller. So that was the story of the Coleco Chameleon. So now, if you see your friends sharing articles, oh my god, there's a new Coleco console coming out, hopefully now you'll be a little bit more informed about what the fucking thing is, you know where it came from, and kind of know where it's going. So, will it still fail even though it has the Coleco name? Most likely, yes. I don't want to be that guy. I don't like wishing failure on anybody. But it just doesn't seem like there's that big of a market for something that's using cartridges this day and age, using cartridges for brand new games. Now, if you ask me about something like the Retron 5, which I have sitting on my shelf immediately to my left, yeah, at least there's a market for that because it's very hard to hook up your older consoles to a new TV, so that has a reason for existing. The Retro VGS really doesn't. It just aims to capitalize on what a very small minority of people would like in their video games. So as much as a few people would like it, and I do think it is a novel idea, don't get me wrong, I don't think it's cool enough for me to go, okay, taking my $300 for something I'm probably only going to play with one time. You know what I mean? So, yep, that is my 2 cents on the whole thing. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. I hope you guys feel a little bit more informed. If you're new around here, please don't forget to subscribe, like, all that good stuff. And as always, I will see you guys on the next live stream.